Yo, what's going on? In today's video, we're going to talk about a good thing that everybody probably should do if you're able to do. Donate your time, donate your, your money if you have excess money to donate to a charity. The problem is that charity legit or is it trying to finesse you? Now, before I start, I know there's going to be some people out there of the black community who may say, "Oh, well, DFD is talking about an organization that started to help black." No, there are plenty of organizations out there, and again, hey, licensed attorney, not financial advice and not legal advice. Throw the disclaimer out there. We are not, and I am not saying that Black Lives Matter is doing anything inappropriate with their funds. All I'm doing is presenting the facts. Y'all make y'all own call. I can tell y'all that, me personally, I never donated to Black Lives Matter because I see some that give me cause to pause. Someone who has decades, not decades, but over a decade of experience in investigating, defending, prosecuting financial crimes. It's just things about the makeup of this organization that to me just strike red flags as being problematic. Hence why, hey, DFD never contributed anything. I didn't even buy a Black Lives Matter shirt. I bought like a Black Lawyers Matter shirt because that was something my law school did or something to that effect. But there are plenty of organizations out there that defraud people. I mean, we've seen lawsuits and reports about people who donated to presidential donation campaigns and that money being used for defense funds or for personal gain. So, unfortunately, a lot of times the things you donate for don't go to the causes that you're hoping that they go to. But we're going to talk about it. I'm going to get an assist from my guy. Shout out to Pocket Watching with JT. If you aren't familiar, check out his channel. Because about a year ago, he kind of dove in and looked at the tax records of Black Lives Matter. So I'm gonna play a short clip from his channel. I'll link that video in the description of this video after I get everything wrapped up. So we're gonna go ahead and talk about it. Black Lives Matter went from an organization that didn't have very much capital to an organization that had a shitload of capital. So what I'm gonna pull up on the screen right now, and I just want everybody to just kind of be able to get an idea of what the finance were looking like. But this is a 2017 tax form from Black Lives Matter that they filled out. They are a nonprofit organization. They have to file the same way business entities have to file business filings with the state and with the federal government. Nonprofits have to do it as well. But we can see from this 2017 tax filing, we're just going to scroll down to number 8 right here, where you look at the contributions and grants that Black Lives Matter received. A little over $279,000. DFD getting blind over here, y'all. But a little over $279,000. That was 2017. Now, during the pandemic, Black Lives Matter, the money that they brought in, it skyrocketed. It went through the roof. And let's just talk about why. Well, there was a few things that compounded, but one, a lot of people during the pandemic, during 2020, the savings rates for Americans actually went up and it went through the roof. Well, why did it go through the roof? Because people weren't going anywhere. A lot of things were shut down. People weren't going out to eat as much. People weren't going out to party and do all these things and vacations. So Americans as a whole had a lot of money. Well, what also happened in 2020 that facilitated to the large influx of donations? Well, we all live in a society where everybody has a camera and we have police conduct that's a little egregious, a little ridiculous, and a lot of illegal. And some of it gets caught on camera. And when this conduct is caught on camera, as it should have, it caused concern and put up a lot of questions about the use of certain police tactics, racism, and so forth. So when the George Floyd situation popped off, that was really a springboard event because people had a large amount of money saved up because either they were getting Some people were getting assistance from pandemic relief. Some people were getting additional unemployment benefits. Some people just had excess savings because they weren't spending as much. But people had money to donate for a cause that was a just cause. I don't think a lot of people disagree that something like that is definitely a just cause. So let's take a look at the tax form from 2020 so we can see the influx from 2017 to what they pulled in 2020. What's going on, Dimitri? I appreciate you joining in. I appreciate you joining in, brother. Thank you. Okay, so in 2020, let's go to that same exact column. We're going to scroll down. We're going to look at number 8, contributions and grants. $76,872,000. Okay. So we can see that the amount of contributions that they got, we know why it went up because of social media, the George Floyd and other injustices that were going on. People had excess money to donate at that time. So Black Lives Matter, their donations essentially went through the roof. Now, again, I don't think you'll find many people who would disagree that the overall cause is good. And I'm gonna be honest, as someone who has investigated a lot of companies, organizations, again, and I'm not saying that there is any fraud going on. There's just some things to give you cause to pause. Black Lives Matter essentially had 3 members on their board of directors, and we'll talk about them and watch an interview from them a little bit later on. But when you have any organization, I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's my personal business, your personal business. If you have an influx in cash from $270,000 to, I think at their peak it was $90 million or something to that effect, just as a matter of course, you aren't going to have the infrastructure to be able to deal with that influx of cash and know how to do it accordingly. Like, I don't know, if y'all got your own business out there, it's a pain in the ass to keep y'all books. So just imagine, not your small business that you may have, but imagine having an influx of cash that's 200, 300, 500 times what you normally had in your business. Is a good strong possibility that you aren't going to keep some receipts. You're probably going to miss some filings. So that is a part of it. If you don't have the infrastructure to sustain when you have a large influx of cash coming in, it's going to be a greater likelihood. It's going to be a greater likelihood that you're going to have some problems popping up. Hey, I appreciate it. Likewise, say happy Memorial Day to you too. I know I made a pot roast. Man, that thing was fire. And so that was one part of it. The organization, the revenue they received and the donations they received grew larger than the capacity that the organization could actually handle. But now I want to go to a clip and I'll tell you, as an attorney at law, I had to do my due diligence. I felt pretty confident that my guy JT, shout out to at Pocket Watcher with JT, go check out his channel. I feel very confident that he knows what he's talking about. But as a part of my due diligence, I had to go back and check. Once I confirmed that what he said was actually, in fact, accurate, as I anticipated that it would be, I said, you know what? Why reinvent the wheel? I'm going to play a short clip from a video that JT made. He's a certified financial planner in St. Louis. He's on there with another YouTuber, Orlando Miner, who's an expert in the real estate game. But they were talking about it. I'm going to play this clip just so we can see where some of the money that Black Lives Matter received had went. I got a few videos we're going to play. They range from about 4 to 7 minutes each. I got 3 videos, but we got to take a look at it. One of them is a interview from the actual founder of Black Lives Matters, which I think was very interesting because there was some interesting comments and interesting answers to questions that were very lawyerly. She answered them really slick. But let me go ahead and pull this video up so we can take a look at what Black Lives Matter actually had going on with their finances. Let's see. Now I'm gonna go ahead and let this whole clip play through before I chime in because I want to get through the clip so we can have the discussion.
tell you that we determine you're exempt from federal income tax under the Internal Revenue Code, blah, 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 blah. But if you see, the date is December the 2nd, 2020.
They're trying to beat that
clock.
clock.
I was saying this late in the game. We're talking about late in the game. December the 2nd, 2020. Now, they officially applied for it in August. So in August of 28, that's when they applied for it. They got it in December, but they backdated. So they actually gave an effective date in August. So they officially became one in August. Okay?
Okay.
That's where we're at. That's where we're at. Okay. So now that they are a nonprofit organization, we can take a look at who is running this place. Who's running this place? So I have on the screen now the official board and officers of the organization. There's only 3 people. There's only 3 people. We're talking about an organization that raised $90 million in 2020. $90 million. Red flag. Absolutely.
I agree with that.
This is a $90 million organization. It's run by 3 people. The people that we have here, we have Patrice Colors. Patrice, she's the woman on the thumbnail. She's the one that everybody knows. She's the one where people are talking about all the different homes that she bought and all this stuff. So that's Patrice. Okay. Patrice is listed as the executive director. Okay. After Patrice, there is a brother whose first name is clearly outside of my scope of pronunciation. I'm going to guess it is Shalomya Bowers. Okay. Last name Bowers. From this point forward, when I talk about him, he's going to be Mr. Bowers. I'm going to say that first name over. But you got Mr. Bowers. Mr. Bowers is right underneath her. Bowers is the deputy executive director. Okay? And then lastly, you got a brother named Raymond Howard. Now listen, there's some things tied to Raymond, but guys, it would take me so long. There's no information on it. It'd be too confusing.
All right, so he about to dive into the tax forms now that we just looked at from 2020. But let's see where some of the money went.
Executive director of the organization and the deputy executive director. All right, now they filed a tax return for 2019. Okay, even though they didn't officially exist in a way where they needed to file until 2020. Okay, so when you look at 2019, there's no information on it. There's no financial information, right? It's all zero. And it makes sense because while they were underneath the umbrella of the fiscal sponsor that they had, the big boy nonprofit that they were under, they had the obligation to report that. So it makes sense that this tax return from 2019 has all zero, right? So this is blank. They just filed this with no information. The thing that's most important to me is right here, you see what their mission statement is, right? Right here is where you tell the IRS why you exist, okay? And based on this filing with the IRS, this is the reason why they exist. They say they exist because to eradicate white supremacy and build local power, to intervene in violence inflicted on Black communities by the state and vigilantes. Okay? This is their mission statement. This is basically saying to the IRS, this is why we feel like we should be tax exempt. Because the money that we raise goes towards this, to eradicate white supremacy and build local power, to intervene in violence inflicted on Black communities by the state and vigilantes. This is why they're
I see where you're going.
This is the statement of why they feel like they should be tax free. All right, now we're gonna move on to what everyone should be waiting for, and this is the 2020 tax.
All right, now this is where we're gonna find out where money went to.
you're a 501c. Make sense?
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay, so here we go. This is 2020. In 2020, one thing that's a huge red flag in Orlando, you know, I don't like this when it comes to nonprofit organizations.
Mm-hmm.
This nonprofit organization, let me see if you can guess. How many people do you think in this organization has the ability to vote on stuff, has voting power? How many people do you think have that? Now remember, there's 3 board members. How many people do you think got a voting power?
How many people do I think or should? I'll go think. I'll think.
No,
I
you
think.
should.
Probably all 3.
You would think.
Probably all 3.
You
Right.
It's a $90 million organization.
Yes.
There's only 3 board members, right?
Mm-hmm.
You would think that all 3 have the ability to vote on stuff, right?
Correct.
All right, let's take a look and see what the tax return says. Survey says one person has the ability to vote on what gets done. Basically,
Let me get it.
And real quick, this is something I talked about before. Anytime you take a look at a corporate entity structure and you want to look at it, if they have a large amount of capital, very few board members, voting authority is very limited. If there's an ability to pass out interest-free loans or to waive those loans, those are all things that I talked about in other videos that just jump off the page as red flags.
Or 0.
they have damn near 50,000 volunteers.
No, they don't, man. No, they don't.
Listen, man.
No, they don't have. Look, there's no way I would even thought of that. There's no way I would even. 50,000 dollars. Oh, come on.
They have 49,275 volunteers. One person gets to decide what goes on.
That makes no sense. That makes no what? That makes no sense.
Okay, now let's get to the.
So, did they have an accountant? Look.
No, listen, they had an accountant did the tax return, but the accountant can't change the internal policies of the actual money that was going on. All right, so here's the money.
Now here's the money part.
2020, after the parent organization handed them the bag that they were holding for them, they started out the year with $76,872,002 worth of money coming in. $76 million. That's just money coming in from contributions, right? That's contributions. Okay. Now, they had a very, very small amount of investment income of $114. I don't know how you get $114 in
Yeah.
investment income when we were sitting on
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. All right. Out. Right. And then they have other income. Other income of $2,772,707. So all together, they're claiming a total amount of revenue for 2020 of $79,644,823. Okay, that's the total amount of money that they claim they brought in 2020. Now, let's take a look at how money went out the door. Right? How did money go out the door? So we have grants. So this is money that they're giving to other organizations, right? $25,997,945. Now, this is what they're supposed to be doing based on their mission statement, right? Empowering local organizations, right? So this is somewhat, it makes somewhat sense, right? It makes somewhat sense. So that was $25 million. Then they have salaries. pay people. Now, remember, we got 3 board members here. It's not a huge staff. Not a huge staff. When it comes to salaries, people getting that bag, it was $245,839. Now, before y'all even ask, right? Before y'all ask, how much money did the board members get in that salary? Nothing. None of the board members are listed as paid employees of the organization. Now, I'm going to show you other ways that they got it back. But as far as W-2 employees, they didn't get any money whatsoever as W-2 employees. But as I said,
all right, I'm gonna see if I can fast forward to where we can see where this money getting passed out at.
All right, so after they paid for salaries, there were other expenses as far as fundraising, right? So they had to pay for fundraising. Here we go. Let's go down a little bit, and we will see some of the independent contractors who got paid by this organization. Okay, so independent contractors. Here's a list of the employees. Right? Here's a list of the employees, and it only shows Patrice and a managing director. And Patrice didn't get paid anything, right? So Patrice didn't get paid anything. The managing director got just a little under $140,000. So there's another $100,000 that got paid to employees, but they're probably smaller employees, don't have a big role in the company, so that's why you don't see them listed. But as far as people who are have big titles who are employees, Patrice didn't take any W-2 income, and the managing director did about $140,000. All right, but let's go into the independent contractors. Here we go. Here's the independent contractor. All right. Now, I want to remind you. Right. I want to remind you of.
Look how he looking at it.
The board. Mr. Bowers, Patrice, and a brother named Howard. We're gonna leave Howard out of this for right now. We're gonna focus on Patrice and Bowers. The very first independent contractor on this list is, can you read that name, Orlando?
Talking about the Bowers Consulting.
Are you? So he was mad serious. That was hilarious.
As we can see, we have Bowers Consulting Firm got $2,167,894. And we checked the records. Yes, the Bowers that is a deputy director of the organization is also the owner of Bowers Consulting Firm. We checked the records. Yes.
And just a side note, I'm gonna pause it right here real quick. This is where we have what we like to call in the investigations prosecution game the friends and family plan. If they wanted to take a deeper dive, and I just didn't want to do it because we already established a connection, we know that according to this video, in 2020 was when they actually became an official nonprofit. I would guarantee you, if we looked at the starting date, I wouldn't guarantee, but there's a strong possibility if we looked at the incorporation paperwork for Bowers Consulting Firm, it's probably around the same time. That firm, and so that's a common thing that you see. Again, not saying they're committing fraud. We just calling out what looks sketch, but that's a common thing that you'll see is a person won't get paid or direct salary from an organization. You'll see consultant firms, consultant fees going out. You'll see the articles of incorporation for when those consultant firms actually started. Most of the times they're brand new organizations that are started. Hey, they may be a valid reason, it may be an invalid reason, but that's something that we normally would identify as a red flag. Okay, you're giving consulting fees to a company owned by someone who's on the executive board Well, let's take a look and see how long this organization been in business. There's a strong possibility, likelihood that Bowers Consulting didn't get started until they filed their paperwork. If I guess, I didn't even look it up. I might look it up doing it as the rest of this video plays. But those are the kind of red flags you look for. We had about a couple more minutes in this. Then I'm gonna jump out, talk a little bit, and we're gonna go to an interesting interview that was done with the founder of Black Lives Matter.
Like I said, following them. I've seen this so many times, and we went through certain people's tax returns and see this exact type of stuff.
It's not complicated, man. Like this is what we've seen. We've seen this a bunch of times. There we go. So we have Mr. Bowers. He's got the most money out of all the independent. Now,
I see.
the next one, the next organization that got the most amount of money is this organization that's called Trap Hills LLC. Okay? Trap Hills LLC. It's described as live production design. They got just under $1 million. We talk about $969,459. So just a little under $1 million. Now, if we just Google the name of this company, we will see that the owner of this company
This is funny.
just happens to be the baby daddy of Patrice.
Bro, that's the first thing I did when we talked.
So Trap Hills LLC is a company owned and operated by the baby daddy of the executive director of the organization. Now remember, she doesn't get paid by the organization. She's above all that. She's not getting paid by the organization. It's just that her baby daddy got about $1 million. Okay, that's that. Now there's another person who is related to Patrice. Got a bag also. Okay? And he got just a little under what the baby daddy got. He got around $800,000. Now there is a section within this tax return, right? There's a section within the tax return where you have to disclose financial and business relationships with related parties. Now, she didn't put that her baby daddy was one of them. I don't know why she thought that her baby daddy wouldn't be considered a related party, but she does have her brother. So her brother name is Paul, and he got paid a bag.
All right, so I think we got the gist of it, but I'm gonna put the link to this video in the description box. It's definitely worth checking out because they kind of did a deep dive into those taxes, and it looked crazy as hell. It looked crazy as hell. I was just on my phone because I wanted to look up and see if I could find an articles of corporation. As soon as I put in executive director Bowers, who is the founder of Bowers Consulting, the first thing that pops up, if you got bad news on the internet, the first thing that's going to pop up is the bad news. You could save 10 people's lives and do one thing bad, and the first thing is going to pop up. But the first thing that popped up related to Mr. Bowers was activists accused Black Lives Matter leader Mr. Bowers of stealing $10 million in a lawsuit that was filed in late 2022. So, and I guess the best way to say is, why is this really so problematic for me? Because like I said, there's organizations that, I mean, we got politicians who misuse campaign contributions for personal gain and all of that stuff. But one, I'm not doing a video on that stuff. But to me, I think this is the most egregious because the potential here, if their conduct is definitely sketch in my opinion. But if it ever is found to be conduct that's fraudulent, is people potentially taking advantage off of Black hardship, Black pain, Black suffering, and that's like the lowest of the low, to find a just cause, but use that cause to be able to siphon money from people. So that's kind of why a story like this hits home for me. And in the thumbnail for this, I don't have a Black Lives Matter shirt on. I a Black Wall Street shirt on that my church was selling. So just FYI, I was like, this dude made this video, got a Black Lives Matter shirt on. But that's kind of the nuts and bolts of it. If you take a look at that video, and like I said, I'll put the video in the description box, or I'll pin it in the first pin comment once I finish this live up. But it's just bad news after bad news after bad news. It's things that's going to give you a constant red flag. One thing, if you go look through that 2020 tax form, even though the owner didn't give herself a salary, she did give herself a loan because she, as the sole person with a vote, had the authority to issue loans. And that, unfortunately, is not uncommon. You will see a lot of corporations that are publicly traded corporations have the ability to give CEOs and people loans at zero or very low interest rates, or potentially waive them. But one of the things I wanted to look for, because I didn't want to be all bad news, red flags. I was like, well, let's take a look at what the hell Black Lives Matter has done. Because we see that in that tax form, almost $25 million went in grants and things like that. Now, some of that cost did go to paying consultant fees and so forth. So we know that all of that necessarily didn't go to grants. But I went to their website because I was like, well, let's go to the news to see what is the most recent articles, because that's what happens when you got a company or a foundation and you're doing good things. You're going to post that on your website. You're going to say, hey, on this date, we provided X amount of resources for low income housing. On this day, you're going to list it out. So I was like, well, let me go to the website and take a look at what they have going on. They know their achievements and what they've done more than anybody else. So I said, let's take a look at what they have on the website. So I went to the website, I went to the news link, and I was like, okay, let's see what they got. So in the news, they got the post January 27, 2023. Board member for Black Lives Matter Global Network released the following statement regarding video footage related to the murder of Tyree Nichols at the hands of Memphis Police Department. Okay, social awareness for things that shouldn't occur or things that could potentially be criminal. Definitely a positive. Let's scroll down. September of 2022, and this is, I'm just be honest, I would expect them to have more consistent news being published. September 2022. Okay, let's see. Hear directly from Black Lives Matter board members, organizers who had a vision for the same vision that carried the organization to incredible heights. Our board members today continue to push the envelope with their expansive background in combating and countering acts of violence, creating a space for Black imagination and innovation. They're introducing new board members here, letting people know about the board. Hey, so far so good. Now we talking about the things that they have posted up here. The cost that it would cost them to do these things, in my opinion, are minuscule. It don't cost you anything but the salary of somebody to write up a bio and do some interviews, maybe a tech guy if his video related to disclosing or introducing new board members. But let's go on. In September 2022, again, National Voter Day, Voter Registration Day, and a giveaway. They're relaunching their voter registration website, would encourage unregistered voter. That's a good thing. No complaints there. Here's where I thought it got interesting. So we got September of 2022. They talked about the voter registration website, which again, I'm giving them kudos for that. That's a positive. September 5th, Black Lives Matter lawyer Melina Abdullah and Black Lives Matter grassroots lawsuit. Okay, here you go. Here's what we talked about with regard to Miss Bowers. This is just the attorneys doing a little bit of attorneying, as they should. Allegations in the September 1st, 2022 complaint filed by Melina Abdullah and Black Lives Matter grassroots that Mr. Bowers and Bowers consulting firm siphoned more than $10 million of donor money from Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation is completely false. We don't know. It's their job to say it's false, so we can't fault them for that. We're going to scroll back down again. That's on the 5th. On the 1st, they addressed the lawsuit again. Then they go down on all the way to June. So from June to September, they had really no news to post. In June, they talked about and put out a statement relating to the overturning the Roe versus Wade, which is a whole nother video for a whole nother day for a whole nother discussion. But again, I didn't want to not give them credit for things that they're doing. So I said, I said, let me I was like, let me take a look and see what else is out there because I want to know what they're doing, what this money is actually going to. Let me tackle a few of the comments that post up. Okay, I'm a new subscriber. Hey, thank you, appreciate that. But they be hey, if you got a question, you can leave it in the chat. I'll circle back up and try to tag and answer those questions, or you can leave it in the actual comment after this video. And if it's something that I can answer in the comment, I will. If it's something that I can answer in the video, or probably is better to answer in the video, I will answer it in the video. But normally, you know, she indirectly is paid via child support. Hey, I would give her a credit. She hooked her baby daddy up. Like, hey, he got him a real one. Of all the baby mothers out there, if your baby mother is willing to write your consulting firm a huge check, like, hey, shout out to him for at least having a real one who's going to try to help him out and going to try to look out. But I wanted to take a look and see, well, what the hell are they doing with their money? What else does Black Lives Matter has going on with their money? So, of course, I went to open source research. Black Lives Matter at 10 years, eight ways the movement has been highly effective. And I'm not even going to pull this up on the screen, but I'm going to just read what I found. And I don't know if I necessarily give Black Lives Matter credit for this because a lot of this is technology. Okay, number one, Black Lives Matter normalized filming of black pain at the hands of individuals sworn to treat everyone equally. Without personal video, we may not have directly known about George Floyd, Freddie Gray, Eric Garner, Sandra Bland, Corey Gaines. I don't think that's a Black Lives Matter thing. I think that's a technology thing, and everyone has access to cell phones. Number two. Okay, I think this is fair. They shifted. For example, in 2017, a Pew study found that 54% of white people view officer-involved shootings involving black people to be signs of a broader problem. The fact that over 50% of white people think that policing has racial issues is a large achievement as well. I agree because not all the times does people who live outside of a bubble understand or can really wrap their mind around what's going on inside of a bubble. So, okay, Black Lives Matter helped usher in a series of policy and organizational changes to policing to include the impact of bias training, body worn cameras, bans on no knock warrants. Um, I think that's more of a technology thing. I give them credit. They did take a big part in the organization of protests. And a lot of times that's the key to getting stuff done. People don't like to get stuff done until there's people out in the middle of the street raising holding a bunch of picket signs. They illuminated the amount of money spent on policing, helped to stimulate problematic cities such as Ferguson, Louisville, Baltimore, Minneapolis. A lot of these things that I found that they had on this list of ways the movement has been effective. Um, Galvanized the new crop of elected officials and political actors. Black Lives Matter is etched in yellow paint on streets outside of the White House. What the hell does that got to do with anything? I don't even know why the hell that's on the list. But it was very hard to find where dollars from Black Lives Matters are going. I did see a lot of money going to educational institutions, none that would cause them to be in potential dire straits where they're looking at or on the verge of potential bankruptcy now. So now I'm gonna take a look. I want y'all to take a look at this video because at some point the founder of Black Lives Matter purchased this big ass mansion. It was about a $6 million mansion, and she got a lot of flack for this mansion. So I want y'all to watch this interview that she did in 2021, I believe, with the Associated Press. It's about 4 minutes. And they're going to ask her explicitly about if she used any of the funds for personal gain. And and take a look at this video. I'm sure y'all, my tribe here, the Intellectual Savage Game, y'all are very observant as to how people answer questions. And the last video is going to be a video that Fox News highlighted it. I know, Fox News, Fox News, Fox News. But if they're reporting on something that appears to be accurate and supported by fact, even though the video does have some other propaganda in it, but that's neither here nor there. I'm gonna play that one as well before we get ready to wrap it up, address any comments, and get out of here. But I want y'all to take a look at this interview with the Associated Press. Let me go and pull this up. Oh, give me a second. The volume going to turn up. It's a little low at first. Just stand by.
How many more black people have to die? Black Lives Matter, the hashtag, like we were just out there like organizing folks. We did not have money.
90 million in donations after the George Floyd murder. $6 million Los Angeles compound that raised criticism.
Talk a bit about how and who decided the property needs state admission. At commercial buildings, we looked at homes, and then we found this really amazing space that's a sweet spot between commercial and residential that has office spaces, that has parking, that has, yes, a home on the property, but also has a sound stage where you can do podcasts and do live events in the backyard. Did you ever receive a salary from the foundation when you were involved either in the early days or before you left? No, I never received a salary from the organization, but I did receive consulting dollars from the organization in the early days. And it was about $120,000 that I received. How do you respond to that? If people think that because you're.
And I'm gonna just tell you right now, I'm not opposed to anybody in an organization getting some form of salary. I'm actually not opposed to members of an executive board in an organization getting a salary that's probably a little overinflated because that's just how the game goes. Here's a pro tip from someone who has had probably hundreds of hours on training of body language. Anytime you do an interview, I even do this with my kids, but anytime you do an interview with someone, you always want to ask them a question that they'll give an honest answer to, but they actually have to recall the information. So a prime example, if someone was sitting down for a job interview, I would ask a stupid question like, "Hey, in when you were in elementary school, what was your favorite subject and why?" That's a question that nobody's gonna lie about. And you're like, well, what the hell does that got to do with the job or what I'm asking this person about? It has absolutely nothing to do with it. But the reason you ask that question is to get a baseline on a person's physical cues for when they're recalling truthful information. So if I ask you that question, you're gonna be like, let's see, in fifth grade, science. Yeah, science was dope because X, Y, and Z. Now you answered that question truthfully, and I don't give a damn what the answer was or response was. But now I know some information about your physical cues that you're gonna make when you're recalling truthful information. So that's just a little pro tip that a lot of people don't do when they're doing any type of interviews.
Somehow aren't as credible a practitioner. I believe that Black organizers who are fighting day in, day out on behalf of Black lives deserve to receive salaries, deserve to receive benefits.
Yeah, I agree with that.
In fact, for most of my organizing life, I was not an organizer that received a salary. Have you ever used money from BLM to pay for your home or the homes of family members or any other funds that donated to Black Lives Matter?
Matter donations to pay for any of the properties that I own in the past or own right now. The idea that
All right, so let me see if y'all peep how that was a great response that she had to that question. Okay, that was a great response that she had to that question. Um, let I don't know if y'all picked up on her answer to that question, but that was a outstanding response that she had. Works with kids too, when they have done something wrong. I use it all the time. Yep, I use it all the time. I got to pick up on those cues. But peep the question he asked her, and then I'm gonna rewind that. I want y'all to listen to what he asked her, and then listen to his response because it's something interesting there that I got to talk about for a little bit.
To pay for your home and organize and see the salary. Have you ever used money from BLM to pay for your home or home family members or any other funds that donated to Black Lives Matter to essentially reduce
no, I have never used Black Lives Matter donations to pay for any of the properties that I own in the past or own right now. The idea that
Did y'all peep that? That was a I feel like she was clearly prepared and rehearsed that response because you can tell it started out real structured. I have never used like most people answer questions when they aren't prepared, they'll just answer the question. But that's also uh a thing that's used in answering questions. When you need time to think about it, you'll repeat the question exactly. Hey, what is your date of birth? Well, my date of birth is, instead of just saying the answer. But he asked her, have you ever used it to purchase a house or houses for your family members or use funds in any way to enrich yourself? Her answer was real slick because her answer solely focused on houses. I don't know if y'all peeped that or that, and maybe it's just me. Maybe maybe it's just me. Maybe but I don't know. It looked a little. It looked a little sketch. She clearly was thinking about it. Eyes down, a little smile. That could have been her recalling what she rehearsed when they needed to address that question. So I'm gonna give her, hey, some benefit of the doubt. She's saying no, but shaking her head yes. That's also another cue, and it's actually quite common. Like my kids do that all the time. Like, hey, you do your homework? They're like, yeah, I did my homework. They shaking their head no. I'm like, this fool ain't do his damn homework. But that's also something that's quite common as well. When you sit through these trainings or read any of these books, people will do that a lot of times. They'll say one thing, but their body will movements will essentially express something else. Um, but her answer was real slick. But I tell you, yeah, definitely practice it. She definitely talked to the Black Lives Matters. Well, probably not the Black Lives Matter attorney. I'm sure she probably talked to her personal attorney. Yeah, but it was interesting. But her response was slick. He asked about the houses, but then he started off real narrow. Have you ever used it to buy a house for you or your family member? Then the second part, it was a compounded question, was really broad. He said, or have you used the money to enrich yourself in any way? Now, if she were going to knock that question out of the park, she'd be like, "Hey, there's in no way have I ever used Black Lives Matter money to enrich myself in any capacity." But no, she kept her answers real strict and targeted towards houses. Which I'm telling you right now, me as someone who has been investigating bankers and like, I'm be honest, investigating this would be easy. These aren't people who are really savvy and creating slick organizational structures where you can't find paper trails, where you can't find who's signing the articles of incorporation or the paperwork for the 501(c) or something to that effect. So I don't know if fraud is going on, but if it's ever investigated, I don't think it would be something that'll take years to figure out. Yeah, it was. It was a little bit of a loaded question, but she could have addressed it a little bit better. You know what I mean? But she also could have addressed it that way to protect her interests. I'm not saying she did, but I know if it was me, I immediately wouldn't look at the houses. When she said that, I'd be like, let's not look at the houses. Let's take a look at all the other stuff. And one thing that you actually see, and I see a lot of, this is how people finesse their way to a payment when they don't want to take money directly from an organization. I've seen it 1,000 times in cases that I work. You'll have organization A, and person one works at organization A. Person one doesn't take a salary from organization A. Organization A hires organization B to do consultant work. Okay. Organization B, and getting those consultant fees, what do? They hire another consultant firm to do some consultant work for some of their processes and operationals. Well, that third organization, there's two organizations removed from where the original money came to. Let's take a look into the article of corporations of that organizations. Lo and behold, it'll circle back and you'll see some people from the original organization. So there's some, and I'm not saying that's what they did here, but I'm saying that's a common way that people get money from an organization without getting money from an organization. They'll pass it through to two or three organizations, and that third or fourth organization, there's two or three organizations removed, will be something that they have ties to, something that they'll actually get a salary for. But it requires a lot of damn legwork to be able to go back and track the paperwork, track the monies, identify if it's the same monies, identify if it's a legitimate purpose. It's a whole process, but something like this definitely isn't I don't know, something like this isn't rocket science. You know what I mean? It don't take somebody who's been doing investigations for 65,000 years to figure out if wrongdoing has occurred in something like this. Now, this last video I want to show y'all is a video. It's a Fox News video. So go through all the propaganda, and we're just going to focus on the facts as it relates to Black Lives Matter, because they went from having $90 million of income revenue donations in 2020 to now potentially being on the verge of bankruptcy. And so, and I'm gonna just be honest, like, depending on how this thing shakes out, if good thing I could, don't let me be the US attorney who sits in their district, because something like this is a case that people become governor off of. Like, something like this is something that people becomes governors off of, and it's something that nobody respects. Nobody would respect if it does prove later on down the line to be a little bit of shadiness going on. Nobody respects profiting off of the pain of any group of people or organization. Well, you got some shady people who do, because they're the ones who are making a profit. But generally, you're not going to have any public support if you're making money off the backs of pain of a certain class of people. And the finesse game when it comes to organizations like this is, I'm gonna tell y'all a real story. The names won't be used to protect the, I'm not gonna say the innocent, but to protect the parties involved. But when you have organizations who are, I guess let's just say, we'll use the, I ain't gonna use the phrase woke because I don't want to sound like I'm some mad right wing guy. But if you got an organization that's pro something, right? Like pro rights for minorities, pro rights for the poor, right? It's dope because it works both ways, because they can capitalize off wrongdoing that's being done to that community. But there are also instances, and y'all can use your own open source research, where they can weaponize that to get contributions as well. Like, well, damn, DFD, how could you weaponize something like that to get contributions? Let's just think about it. If I have this huge, large following and I go to a corporation, one, it looks good for most corporations to have their names on a donor list to an organization that, you know, helps low income families or a certain class of minorities. So in this example, let's say I had an organization like Black Lives Matter that's focused on doing work in the black and brown minority communities in America, and I went to a corporation like, I don't know, whoever makes Solo cups, right? So I go to Solo Cup Corp. One, it looks good for them to have donations on the book, but two, and I know this is true for a fact. I won't talk about how I know it, but they can weaponize that in a way like, hey, we're coming to you because we would like to get a donation for our cause. It's a good cause. We could do a collaboration. But the other thing is, you don't want to look like you're not down for helping out minorities. Like, hey, it sounds crazy, but these are the things that happen with organizations like this. Is sometimes those things can be weaponized as a threat. You're like, oh, I don't want my company to be looked at as a company who's not in support of the black community or the Hispanic community or low income community. So hey, okay, now don't do no campaign against me. Here's a donation. We want to work with y'all to do X, Y, and Z. I know that sounds crazy as hell, but those are the type of things and the type of gamemanship. Those are the type of gamesmanship that happens. It's not the cup that's the issue if I choke and drink. It's y'all comments that's the issue if I choke and almost die on a live stream because y'all say something that is hilarious. And most of the time it's you, might I add, now that I think about it. But let's take a look at this last video that I want to play before we get out of here. And it's a report of Fox News where they're just talking about how the organization went from $90 million to almost having to file bankruptcy. Again, we're going to ignore any propaganda that you may see because we got to understand that this is Fox News, and I think this was probably the best video that kind of outlined it and is a little bit easier than me talking through a whole big ass long article. But you can see there's plenty of there are plenty of articles out here that talks about how their assets have just diminished completely. This is another article by Black Enterprise Magazine talking about the same exact thing. All right, so let's go and pull up this video.
So let's change everything. Black Lives Matter is a national organization at risk of going bankrupt after its finances plunged millions into the red last year. Columnist and author Adam Holman joins me now. Adam, great to have you here on set. Before we break down the numbers, just how shady are the finances of BLM?
Just as shady as Joe Biden's son and Burisma.
Oh man, Fox News never disappoints. Okay, that I just thought that they're gonna take their jabs. You know what I mean? But let's focus on the Black Lives Matter numbers here.
Basically, it looks like they're funneling money to either their family members to possibly get it themselves. But the entire situation looks incredibly shady.
But broken down the numbers to the penny, we're going to do a little bit more broad strokes here. But let's take a look. Total revenue, basically 8.5 million. Total expenses, 17 million. That is not good when you do the math. And let's do that math, and you can see the total deficit that they were running is about 8.5 million. And on top of that, they had investment losses of about 10 million as well. So how did it get this bad if for years, Adam, they've been on the receiving end of all this white guilt money, all of this corporate money, and in the year after George Floyd?
Again, we're gonna ignore the propaganda and just take a look at the numbers because the numbers are accurate.
They received $90 million. How did it get this bad in the red?
Just like any other organization where it's this bad, they never had a plan. I think truly Black Lives Matter had no concept of having this much influx of money.
And I agree with that.
If you look at the previous tax year before 2020, they had $0. So it went from 0 to 90 million.
They had no infrastructure.
For most people, if you win the lottery, a lot of people don't know how to handle that. So just using the best case scenario that they're not trying to be sleazy, but that they just completely mismanage it. So none of this surprises me.
I mean, just put the investment money in an index fund. You're not going to lose $10 million. I mean, you may not have crushed it like you're going into a VC or private.
He's not wrong.
To your point, though, are they giving this money to family members to sort of funnel into that and sort of be like, hey, we're hiring them as employees? One example, apparently, of that is Patrice Culler's brother. And let's pop that up on the screen. Paul Color's financial records. $1.6 million given to his security company, and then he received a yearly salary of $126,000 as head of security. Maybe it's me, but that seems like a lot of security to me.
Yes, that's a lot of security. I mean, she always says that she's under a lot of danger. I guess security is extremely valuable to pay this much money. I mean, this is the shady part that we're talking about. I think the rest of it, like, what did they actually do with the money? It's leftist organizations that had nothing really to do with Black people, to benefit Black people, more so to benefit the LGBT community.
All right.
Haphazard.
We,
They
we,
have really no idea what they're doing, and it shows. So that's why it looks like they're slowly going up.
That is the overall point. What did Black America get from this? Like, what did they receive in terms of benefit?
There are smaller organizations receive nothing from it. Their local Black Lives Matter chapters, they always complain about where are the resources, how do we manage this.
all right. So, man, their facts were accurate because I double checked them. But damn, that was Fox News don't play when it comes to propaganda. I wonder how much they paid that dude to make that joke about Biden's son. But is oh, let me see. Let me tap in real quick. Definitely. But that's the name of the game. I'll be honest. I do agree with the point that I don't most. If I had to put a percentage on it, I'd probably say maybe 60% of fraud that I've seen throughout my career. It actually didn't start out with the intentions of being fraud or being something that was a scam. Even a gentleman I talked about before I represented who had a multi-million dollar Ponzi scheme and took a crap load of money from retired teachers. It didn't start out as a Ponzi scheme. It actually started out with him trying to do the right things with the investment. He just unfortunately sucked ass at investing money. So that's actually something that you see that's quite common. Even I know at one point I used to do a lot of investigations on healthcare providers, and they don't your doctor, your dentist don't go overbill your insurance or something like that on purpose. A lot of times it was thought out as a mistake, like, oops, I was supposed to build this root canal like this, but I accidentally separated all the stuff I do in a root canal and built it individually, but they got paid for it. They're like, oh, well, they didn't catch it that time. So a lot of times things actually start with good intentions. And if you don't have the infrastructure, or as the old saying goes, as my mother used to always say, your money get funny, or you trying to get a little greedy, and that doesn't necessarily mean it starts out with bad intentions. So it's going to be interesting to see where this spins off to. It's going to be interesting to see. That's their stick. Yeah, I know they pretty terrible, but they actually kind of broke their story. So I was like, I'm gonna go ahead and play it off their channel, but they gotta find some way to make it political, don't they? It's all it's all good. And that's a big part of it too. Lack of understanding of financial laws and regulation would be any underlying factor in many communities. And I agree, because there was also an interview where they interviewed the founder and executive director at the time of Black Lives Matter, and she was like, "I actually had no clue of the proper forms that I needed to be filed as a 501(c)(3). As a nonprofit, I literally never heard of that until we got this big ass influx of cash." So it's going to be interesting. I'll be honest, I would not be shocked if a criminal investigation is going on, or I'll say an investigation in general, because when an organization is under an investigation, you just investigate it. You don't look if it's criminal, if it's civil. You don't really look for that stuff. You just investigate it. Then, as you get the facts, then an attorney will look at it and say, okay, this is criminal because they had the requisite intent to defraud, and we can prove that intent by their conduct, or we can prove that intent by this communication we found in this email chain or this text message chain. So it's going to be interesting. I wouldn't be shocked if an investigation isn't already being done somewhere behind closed doors. If one is done, will it be criminal or not is going to depend on what they can find, and if it's something that they can find where they can actually prove criminal intent. I'll tell you, if it were me, if I was investigating this case and I found a smoking gun, I'm going criminal all the way because the funds are clearly being misappropriated. That's a different story. As it would be one thing if you were investigating, let's say I was investigating a healthcare provider, and a healthcare provider committed fraud, and that fraud was criminal. But that healthcare provider is actually providing legitimate healthcare services to a large percentage of the population. Well, in a situation like that, I'm like, man, we could proceed criminally, but if we proceed criminally, if this place gets shut down, the 70% of business that they were doing that was legit, who are going to sweep in and service those people so that they still get services? You would have those considerations to think about. Those considerations won't be present with something dealing like an organization like Black Lives Matter if an investigation was done and they actually found some wrongdoing, because the money, one, their donations are just decreasing dramatically, but two, they don't have any real community that they're supporting. It's going to be hard for them to find, like, okay, no, we okay, even though that conduct was wrong, we got to stay afloat because we're doing this because we got so much substantial ties to the community. And like I said, a case like this is something that someone will become governor off of. like if you had a case like this, oh man, and some criminal conduct was found and they were found guilty or they took a plea, oh man, you might end up in Congress off of a case like this. So it wouldn't be it wouldn't be it wouldn't be something that someone would punt over to the civil side as well. Yeah, athletes, artists, musicians, hell, it happened to regular people. Regular people start a small business, and that small business make more income than they anticipated, and they just didn't keep track of their receipts. So imagine three people trying to figure that shit out with $90 million. It's inevitable that you're gonna have a lot of stuff that's just gonna look ridiculous. Yeah, knowledge. Intent comes down to knowledge, and there's some people with bad intent that also can go to those 9 degrees of separation to avoid being caught. But that is a topic for another time that you can cover. Yeah, intent is what knowledge with a substantial certainty. Knowledge with a substantial certainty, or you can prove intent by extreme recklessness. So you get a couple bites of the apple. Most times, knowledge with a substantial certainty. Most times, when they use that definition of intent, they're talking about, we found the smoking gun where an email was sent saying, "Hey, I'm directly telling my employees to do this for the purpose of fraud or covering up a fraud." When they say intent can be proven through extreme reckless behavior, is okay. That would be a scenario of, okay, maybe the first year when you donated to your baby daddy's organization, we can let that slide. But you've been donating to his organization for 5 or 6 years. Each each time the amount of the donation or the consultant fee goes up, and we look at the duties performed aren't increasing, haven't increased in complexity. So they got a couple of ways they can go at this at the bite of the apple. It's sad though at the end of the day, because yeah, a paper shredding party. Yeah, those things happen too. And even if it's not criminal, the final thing that I think I want to give on is, even if it's no criminal exposure, they got a shitload. Pardon my language. They got a crap load of civil exposure here, and all of their personal assets will probably be in play from a concept that talked about before called piercing the corporate veil. If it can be proved that they're using this Black Lives Matter entity to facilitate their lifestyle, to pay for their lifestyle, to funnel money for themselves, that'll allow anybody who's suing them to, normally if you got an LLC or corporation and that corporation is sued, you can only take the assets of the corporation. If the corporation so they can't touch your personal stuff. But if they could show that, hey, the funds in this corporation or this organization were being mismanaged, it'll allow them to look past Black Lives Matter corporate structure and actually go after the people personally, their personal assets, their personal bank accounts. So they got a lot of exposure on the line here that's going to be really kind of ridiculous. And bottom line, the cautionary tale is everything that you think is a good cause probably not may not be the best thing to invest in. I don't know about y'all, but like I know once I went to a church and I was like, oh, this church is kind of dope. And after going there for a while, I was like, I don't know, because I have to physically be able to see, like, okay, if I'm going to a church and I'm donating and they got funds coming in, I like to see actually where that money is going to use. And if I can't see where it's going to use, it's gonna give me a bad feeling in my stomach. Like I'd set that money aside in a separate account and be like, yeah, I'm not going to waste it. I'm just not giving it to them. Let me find a place or something that I want to do to give that money to that I think is going to be beneficial, that I can actually see is going to use. So a lot of times you want to find a place that has transparency. It's a damn shame if people are profiting off of the pain that goes on in the community through, whether it's law enforcement being excessive and taking a life, or disenfranchising lower socioeconomic class of people. That's a jacked up thing to do. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. But hey, check out the video that Pocket Watcher with JT did where he broke down the tax documents. I'm gonna link it in the description box and pin it in the comments. As always, y'all take care. Have a blessed one. Hope y'all enjoyed y'all long weekend. Be safe. Peace.